whenever we write a program in Python or C, okay, specifically in C language, we have compiler. If we take Python, we have Python interpreter. When you write a program in Python, the Python interpreter, which is not exactly a compiler but similar to a compiler, the Python interpreter will convert your high level code that you worked on in Python language into machine level language. So this machine level language will only have information like how you should pass the control from one register to another register in the microprocessor, in which the CPU in the motherboard will work around. So that is the machine level language which is being specified here. And again, machine language is just only about zeros and ones. In the process, we do really have a lot. We have compiler engineers who work on optimizing the compiling process as well. So when you write code in Python or the basic C or C++ language, your code is converted into the intermediate assembly language, and from the assembly language it will be converted to machine language, which is only with zeros and ones. In the process, there are compiler engineers who are working on optimizing your assembly level code. So even there we have artificial intelligence, wherein we, instead of humans intervening the job of the compiler and to optimize the assembly level language code, where I mean your code that you get in the form of move R0, R1 to R0, add R1 to add R1 R0. So that is the kind of assembly language that I'm talking about. So over there, while we optimize the code, so even in that, there are engineers who are working with respect to machine learning algorithms to optimize assembly level language. And your assembly level language will be converted lower to machine language, which is only zeros and ones. Here is your assembly language. So whatever instruction that you would write in your high level language, that will be converted into assembly language, and then the assembler would convert it into your machine language. It is from the machine language where you have all the zeros and ones in your log file. Based on that, the electric signals will pass in your microprocessor, and the work gets done in your computer. And high level languages, whatever you would choose to write, you whether you want to write in C or Python or Java, Ruby on Rails, what is your choice. It is how it is just an interface wherein the human thought process and how humans have planned their algorithm would be written in such a way that the computer can understand, and hopefully with no errors in the end. So this is the high level language that which you could choose any of the ones which is necessary for to solve your problem. And then you have compiler in the case of C programming. You have Python interpreter in the place of compiler to convert your Python high level language code to machine language, assembly language and machine language. Here it is. And then you have your this is the compilers and interpreters that I had been talking about. So if you I have been options. For example, option one is okay, imagine you wish that you were to be able to access the content of a book that is written in a language which you are unfamiliar, and how could you get the book translated into language that you would understand. So option one is get the entire book translated by a translator and then receive a complete copy of the translated book. That is what is analogous to a compiler. And the option two is hire a translator to read the book for you, translating each sentence one at a time. That is how an interpreter would work. Compilers is for C programming language and interpreter is for Python programming language. So since we are speaking on the Python programming language for data science and machine learning, we have option 2. So we have Python interpreter. And then you have syntax and semantics. So whenever you're converting your language code into assembly level language code, you will have to follow the syntax and semantics of it. People who would have read about operating system in their bachelor degree or any time across in their career, they would be aware of it. Going deep into this topic is not in the scope of this webinar, so I would restrict the discussion of syntax and semantics to this slide. And next we have algorithms. Whenever we are asked to in the theory exam to explain about what is an algorithm, we always write huge answers for it to get more marks out of it. So yes, algorithm is a simple and an effective mean of communicating to your computer on how you want the process to be performed. For example, you want to perform addition of two numbers. How a simple calculator would work is not similar to how a scientific calculator would work, and those calculators are different from the calculator that you have on your mobile or laptop. So the logic is the same. A plus B is equal to C. But the point is, whenever you are writing it into whenever you're creating the same application to various devices, they change. So algorithms is wherein you are creating the recipe that you should follow for that specific device to solve a particular logic. And then we have problem solving process. This is problem solving process in general. So first, whenever you feel very much clouded on derive a solution, you should first sit and try to uh, write what the problem is. So whenever you write about a problem, you start analyzing it, and then you start realizing various aspects that would come around a problem. And then after you have got a clear picture of what a problem is, then you start describing it with the data structures and algorithms. So the problem that you have, okay, the crisis that you would see, you want to innovate a certain product or a service. So that is the idea that you have in your mind, and then you write it down, and then you start thinking around how it should be done, what should be done, and what could be the steps to achieve your target. This is what you would generally in your English language. And then the next step is you have to mathematically arrive at a conclusion to see whether it is actually feasible or not. Your idea, whatever you have got from intuition or discussion with people or with reading your research papers or anything as such. After that, you have to mathematically analyze whether it would work. And then when the mathematics says yes, you can proceed further, then you will start how to solve them computationally. So then you would start hitting your data structures and algorithms knowledge, and you would start create understanding what kind of data types I have to create and what is the data structure I have to choose. Should I choose an array or a list or a dictionary or a tuple or whatever it is? Then you start in your data structures, and finally you create appropriate algorithms. Algorithms over here are quite wide in this, like it is a wide term to be specific. Whenever you're writing a program, you first understand what data types you need and what data structures you need, and how should you have to create functions. Should you have to use OOPS concept with classes, objects, inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation and abstraction, all of that, where to create the whole process over there. When you arrive at that stage, you would have solved 50% of your problem. The workflow that you designed in stage 1 in English language would have been converted to almost what you would uh, implement in computation. Then you would have to implement your program. You can choose any of the Python coding platforms which is feasible to you, and then you start coding, and you'll have a lot of cycling to do over there to fix the errors. And after you fix all the errors successfully, you have your application built for you. And next, till now we have only spoken in general about uh, artificial intelligence and how high level language is converted into machine level language with assembly language in between and all of that. uh, what should an ideal programming environment should be? Because you have generated your idea, you want to solve a certain problem in the world, in the society, you have got that intuition, so now you have to solve them. So how should an ideal programming environment should be for you? Environment in the sense, it is not only about the programming language, it is about the it is about the operating system that you're choosing. It is also about the IDE, the softwares on which you're coding on. Is it the Anaconda? Okay, in the Anaconda Navigator, you have Spider, you have Jupyter Notebook, you have, and also you have PyCharm separately. So you have all of these. You also have Google Colab and Azure Notebook, AWS SageMaker. There are many, Python development environment providers in the society, but you are the one who would be choosing them. Coding in PyCharm is not same as coding in Jupyter Notebook or Google Colab. So you choose that, and then uh, eh, and then most importantly, you have to choose the appropriate programming language for your uh, problem that you have to solve. For example, if your research involves in collecting data from sensors, for example, you are using sensors to collect the room temperature or humidity in the atmosphere. So in that cases, you are collecting data from sensors, you would possibly be using a C language and Python, which is wherein you would not really be using Python extensively over there. If you're working with huge sets of data and you have to perform scientific uh, calculations on data, and if you're working on problems that are related to astronomy or the other statistical inferences, for that you have to choose Python. If you're working with related to application development and you want your application to be secured and you don't want hackers invading and corrupting your data and stealing your data and all of that stuff, you need Java for that. Because we know Java has JVC. In the meanwhile, it will protect your code when it is converting from a high level language to machine level language. So you're choosing the ideal programming environment, in the sense your software and your operating system and your programming language is a very important phase. And what is out there? Have MATLAB, and then okay, here I'm speaking about the scientific libraries that are most extensively used. So we have MATLAB, Maple and Mathematica. NumPy and SciPy are used in Python. MATLAB is different. Maple and Mathematica are also different. And here the star of our webinar, Python. So Python attracts most users without a doubt. Trust me. If you started your computer engineer journey from C language and you went to Java, and if you have come back landed in Python, you seriously don't want to go anywhere. Python is that easy and it is widely used, and you can work right from basic addition to uh, scientific calculations with galaxies. I mean, you can really work with you can really work on coding to all range of problems. So Python is advantageous and it supports various kinds of uh, it has many libraries as well for you to help with solving your problem. And it is an object oriented language, not like C. Over here we see the library packages in the machine learning task. We have NumPy, SciPy, and skitlearn. So these three packages are widely used. NumPy, you would be usually seeing them with array manipulations, wherein we would be whatever you choose. If you are choosing speech processing or image processing or even text processing with NLP, you are converting your data into a three-dimensional array, and that three-dimensional array be passing into your neural networks for further computation. So you would be using NumPy extensively, whether you're working with the smallest regression model to even the quantum level of quantum machine learning, you will be using NumPy over there. And then SciPy, it is used for mathematical functions. So whenever you are working with, if you want to work with scientific functions, for example, with respect to speech processing, like if you are working with digital signal processing, and if you want to filter your audio signals, you need Fourier transforms, complex Fourier transforms on your audio signals. So at that point of time, you would need SciPy for your scientific calculations like Fourier transforms, Laplace on your audio signals. And then you have skitlearn. It is widely used, second to NumPy. We would be seeing this more often in classification, regression, and clustering models. Then we have matplotlib for creating plots. And finally, our own pandas library, which we would be using most of the time to create our data frames and manipulate them, converting data frames into arrays and then passing into neural networks. Most of the basic operations we would be using pandas. And then this is the IPython console over here, wherein we are speaking about the environment that we would use to work on our coding exercises. IPython is analogous to the terminal in your Ubuntu or with the command prompt in your Windows system. So whenever you start an IPython console, this is what you will have in the first image, the one with black screen. So you will have shell prompt. So through that you write your Python script. I mean, you create an empty Python script, and in that Python script you write your code, and then when you run the Python script, you will start getting the output in the console itself. Don't have any graphical user interface for that. It is only with the terminal. Again, the IPython console is merged with Jupyter Notebook, so that if you're working on black screen like that, it was not really feasible if you want to create interesting visualizations. Or if you're working on image processing, you want to show the image that is denoised, the objects that has been identified as such. You cannot work with them on a terminal kind of an interface, right? So that is merged into Jupyter Notebook. Each and every cell would act as a shell in the like IPython terminal. So where you write your code, and when you run, you get output with interactive visualizations. Trust me, to what extent this Jupyter Notebook has been evolved is that you can embed Power BI and Tableau visualizations in your Jupyter Notebook. You have Power BI library uh, in your Jupyter Notebook for you to import the visualizations from Power BI to Jupyter Notebook and then to showcase them on your notebook. Okay, let's take a small break for a few minutes. So this is the second webinar that we have on February 20, sorry, second in this, I'm sorry. This is the next webinar that we are having on February 26th, Secrets to Get Your Research Paper Published and Hasten Your Research Writing. So kindly register yourself for this webinar because writing a research paper and getting it published is really a tedious task. The point is everybody would get ideas, and in the process of implementing and writing them, we have to face the evil plagiarism. So we have to make sure that we give the best quality out of it. So kindly attend this webinar. Hope to see you all there. We'll take a few minutes of break. Great, let's get back. So I'll be continuing the next session. And here we have data types in Python. To be specific, if you're a beginner in Python, it genuinely needs 3 months for you to uh, gain that expertise in Python. So over here, based on the time constraint, I'll be just going through how Python would be used in data science and machine learning. And starting from data types, the root immutable data types are integers, float, string, and boolean. And based on that, okay, integer, float, and boolean. So based on that, we have other data types that we have that is built, which is string, list, and tuple. String is a character array. So even that is we call it as derived. List and tuples are we list in the sense we can have a list of integers or float numbers, or even you can have a list which has the names of fruits. So we have in the lists in Python are different from arrays in Python. So I really hope that if you are coming from C programming background, it is not this. I would say that it is not the same. List is different from array. Whenever you're working with initializing a list, it is different from how you would an array. For array, you have to import a package, import array as arr or whatever you want to, and with that you create array dot and then you create the uh, create in the sense you insert the values that you want to in your array. So initializing an array is different from a list. Tuple in the sense, if tuple is when you want to create uh, a set of objects which cannot be changed, which is static until the execution of your code is complete. And then we have dictionaries in Python, which says that you have to store values in the format of key and value. And then we have a set, which is usually like how we say the definition for a set, which is the defined objects. And even in Python, we can perform union, intersection, difference uh, on set. So these are the data types that we have in Python. And then NumPy array. The normal array is different, and the other data types which I mentioned, string, list, tuple, dictionary, and set, all of them are different. NumPy array is uh, derived from the package NumPy, and with NumPy package and ND array, you can create n-dimensional array. You can create, if you are using a Python package array, then you can create only one dimension. If you're using NumPy package, you can create any number of dimensions in your array. You can create 1D array, 2D, 3D. So generally, if you're working with neural networks or any other regression models, you would most widely be using NumPy arrays, because over there you will be passing your data in the form of 2D or 3D array matrix, and you'll be working on matrix uh, manipulations and calculations over there inside the neural network with based on your weights, bias, and activation functions. So over there, when you need 2D and 3D arrays, you'll be using NumPy. And in NumPy, you have in the NumPy main package, you have other packages for linear algebra, random number generation. You would remember like np.random. If you want to create any number of random values into your one-dimensional array, so you would use np.random. And then if you want to work on discrete Fourier transforms, you would be using NumPy array. And unit testing is when you are performing your testing process on the code that you have written. So you would be chalking out, you would develop the test cases with various inputs to test the vulnerability of your code. So even for that, we will be using NumPy arrays. NumPy package. And then indexing, slicing is most commonly used when you are working with array manipulations, because uh, when in the wider perspective, when you are working on a research called speech processing or image processing, you would have to slice your arrays, and then you have you have to give the input to your neural network in slices. So in that case, you would be using indexing and slicing through NumPy package. And then matplotlib package for your for plotting the visualizations. This is how you would use it for if you want to plot your values on an x and y axis. That is how you say you import matplotlib.pyplot as plt. With that alias as plt, you will be plotting your values. And to go in specific with each and every of the matplot, you can specify the title, the label, and the color of the line that you would want in your plot, and along with the values that you are giving over there. This is a graph with sound or any signal plot. So you would be using NumPy there to generate your values, and then you are using matplotlib package to plot the graph. So you are converting the values that you have got into a cosine value. You are obtaining the cosine of the values that you have from x2, and then you're plotting them. Plt.subplot is only to make sure that you can plot two graphs in the same window. And then histogram. So over here, all of these data that is being taken over here are all generated on random. So as we said in the previous slide, we have np.random and we are creating 1000 values over there randomly. And again, we are plotting a histogram on that. It looks like fairly a standard normal curve. That's great to see on a histogram. And this is a scatter plot. So a scatter plot will bring relationship between the two measures that we want to see. Like for example, the two measures that we have on x-axis and y-axis, we want to see the relationship between them. So that is visualized in a scatter plot with based on the size of the measures you see on the graph. And then we have the pandas library, most widely used for data frame and series computations. So whenever you are working with again speech processing or image processing or even text processing problems, you will require to it is essential for you to convert your signal data into which would be in wave file .wav, or your image file which is jpg or png format, that you have to extract. In image you have to extract the data from each and every pixel. When it comes to sound, you have to extract each and every intensity of the signal at each instance into a data frame or an. And if you're working with text processing, you have to work on one hot encoding. So you are at any point of time you are converting your original data format, whatever it is, into a data frame or a NumPy array. So in all such cases, you would be using pandas library. And again over here, so this is just a visualization using the like how you would use your pandas library to read CSV, where that CSV is what is the data set that you have. So here is we are considering the task of discovering how the daily maximum temperature has changed over time, and you have your sample data, which is the data set for your problem. And over here you can see the contents of your data set, you have read you usually read your CSV into a data frame, and that is how you would display them. And this is a small code to rename your columns. I mean, the names of the columns are really huge, so we are renaming them. And again, this is to get a summary of the data set that you have imported into your Jupyter notebook, and which is now in a data frame. You use df.describe. And finally, you would use your matplotlib to give you a general plot of the data that you have. So this is the next package, SciP, which adds a layer to the NumPy, and which has all your scientific and statistical applications on your NumPy, on top of your NumPy. So here is what you have in SciP package. You can you have cluster, which is widely used for k-means clustering and hierarchical clustering models to generate dendrograms along with the cluster visualization. And then you have interpolate to work on the interpolation of the graph that you have generated from your regression models. And optimize is wherein you would be using optimize to work on optimizers in neural networks, like add optimizer stuff. And then the very famous one, uh, skitlearn. You would be we say that as sklearn. So you would be seeing this kind of code very much in search engines or whatever projects you would choose. The very famous iris data set. So this data set is loaded into the sklearn package, so that if you don't really have to download it from anywhere else, you can just start working on it. So this data set contains 150 samples of 3 types of irises, Setosa, versicolor, and virginica, and you classify them based on their sepal width and petal uh, features and all of that. Okay, so this was a very brief session for Python with data science learning. To be specific, to even start your journey with in learning with Python, it takes 3 months. And if you are working in pressure to get placed into a company, if you're learning it to work on with the interviews, it is even more hectic. You have to work on each and every basics of the Python programming language. You start from what is a variable, what is a comment, till the OOPS concept in Python, how you work on inheritance, abstraction, polymorphism, and encapsulation in Python. To be specific, if any of you would have understood OOPS in Java, OOPS in Java is stronger than, I mean, it is the strongest of all, and object oriented in Python is very weak. You can only work with inheritance and effectively. Abstraction and encapsulation doesn't really work well in Python. So after that, if you are coming into the realm of Python for data science and machine learning, you have to set yourself with the basics first. Uh, and to be frank, let me tell you, we have the code available in the internet. You don't really have to reinvent the wheel or start from scratch anywhere. You have the libraries, ample number of libraries, and there are many that's been created. So the only point is that you are the one that has to understand what is my research and where I should go, how I should develop. Because if this library is not working, there is another library that would work really well. And for only digital signal processing alone, you have a lot of libraries. I mean, the NumPy and SciPy is very basic. You have a lot of libraries. For example, you can understand the room acoustics. For example, if you are working on audio signals, you can design the room you are in. You know, what kind of walls you have. Are they made of bricks? And what kind of roof you have and floor you have? Are they coarse or are they fine? Do they have does the floor have marble in it? Trust me, you can assign variables to um such parameters, and there are libraries as such in Python. Only in Python. They are not there in Java or C programming language. So the whole point is that if you're Python is for data science and machine learning, it is mostly about how you would want to proceed rather than breaking your head for choosing which code I should use or which library I should use. So, if given a chance, if you would want to explore in implementation for your research, we at Aristocrat are always open for you. So, we would be there to help you out with coding in Python for your data science and machine learning project. This was only an overview for the webinar. And thank you for attending the session till here. I would really wish all of you good, good luck with your research journey and also have a good life. Thank you very much. I received a question in the Q&A box. It says that can we use it to program a vacuum circuit breaker of 3500 volts? Sir, can you please explain more on the question? Because it is not really communicating enough with only one sentence over there. We have an answer for the question on e-certificate. So after the webinar, you will get a link to your registered Gmail email account to download your to log into Aristocrat Research website and download your certificate. Hope that answers queries on e-certificate.
The webinar has ended. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.